And in the business space, when we are trying to sell services, the hero is the customer. The hero is not the business. Sorry to disappoint anybody who still thinks that their brand or their business is the hero. And those heroes always tend to be flawed. They always tend to be struggling against something in the stories that we're familiar with.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Welcome back to the Better Than Rich Show. I'm your host today, Mike Abramowitz, and we are here with Brian Sooy. Brian, welcome to the Better Than Rich Show, brother.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Really looking forward to a conversation with you.
Well, I'll tell you, we pushed this out and we had a lot of people interested in the conversation. We've had a lot of good convos about marketing. We've had a couple of good conversations centered around the story brand concept on how to bring that into the trades, but we have not had someone write the book, literally. You are the author of Blue Collar Branding, the book that helps building a brand that earns your home service business. I believe that this is going to be a really great conversation around trust, around the story brand framework. You have an incredible resume with helping serving organizations, small entrepreneurs to $5 billion companies. I mean, you're doing this for over 3 decades. So you wrote the book, you have tons of experience, and excited to kind of set the stage a little bit here. So my curiosity is going to start right away. If you want to just give us a frame, story brand. Just start here. We've talked about this on the show, but for the uninitiated, if you just want to break us down on the hero's journey, the concept of who's the hero in the story framework. Is it the business? Is it the client? How do we explain this in the most layman, simplest terms possible, just for anybody who's uninitiated in the concept of the story brand framework?
Sure.
And how it relates to the service space specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just so everybody's familiar with it, the story brand framework is a business storytelling framework that pulls from the thousands of years of people telling stories. And if you watch any movies, we can always look at a Marvel movie or a Star Wars movie, even Lord of the Rings. There's always a hero. And in the business space, when we are trying to sell services, the hero is the customer. The hero is not the business. Sorry to disappoint anybody who still thinks that their brand or their business is the hero. And those heroes always tend to be flawed. They always tend to be struggling against something in the stories that we're familiar with. And just like in life, people wake up in the morning, they jump in the shower, they turn the water on to hot, they step in and it's pretty cold. There's their problem for the day. They need to do something about that. So they call their local home service company. They're really frustrated. They're just not sure what to do. And that local service company comes on, says, yes, we can help you with that plumbing problem. We're familiar with waking up in the morning. It's happened to many people that we serve. And we're here to help you. And the business becomes the guide. And so then that guide gives them a plan. We'll take your information. We'll schedule a visit right away. It sounds like it's really urgent because we know you have to get to work. You have to get your kids to school. And we'll come out, we'll diagnose the problem, we'll recommend a solution and take care of it for you. So it's a very simple 7-step framework where there's a hero, a character or hero who has a problem. That problem can be internal, so they'll be frustrated or they'll be upset by the problem they have. The external problem could be, in this instance, the water that's cold. The hero comes alongside, or the guide comes alongside, and says, well, I've got a plan that we can help you. If you work with us, we'll get you back to work on time. We'll get everything taken care of. If you don't work with us, you're going to probably still have cold water in your shower tomorrow.
I really appreciate the simplicity of the frame, and I want to make sure the listener heard that correctly. The client is the hero in this journey. And you, as the business, want to create a brand that is centered around your client avatar, which means, if Brian, you want to speak to this, how explicit do we need to be in our branding and in our marketing of who that client avatar is? Because frankly, what you just said is a couple of things. If in this user experience that we just said is they have to have a shower, they have to be a homeowner. What type do we want to get explicit of? Like, what type of shower is it? What type of home are they living in? What type of job do they have? Like, I'm about to go to work. Does it matter what type of work I'm going to? Like, how explicit in the branding do we want to be to and like specific to that hero, to the homeowner in this case, when we are running a plumbing business or a landscape business or an interior design company or a roofing company. Can you kind of speak to that just for for a moment?
Sure. I don't know that for, when we talk about an avatar or a persona, that we need to get into, I mean, personally, I don't feel that we need to get into the demographics of them unless it's, unless we want to be working with homeowners, and that would be the biggest category. If you're a residential services company, if you're commercial, you're going to be looking at other considerations. And that homeowner, we would say maybe the home has a value of $250,000 and up, and that homeowner's making $80 to $100,000 and up. So that's our demographic. But beyond that, we want to appeal to the problem that they have, and we want to make sure that we understand what's their pain points. So it moves more into the psychographic. At Gorjank Home Services, where I'm the marketing director, we talk about we want to keep homes safe, comfortable, and healthy. And so everything we speak to addresses one of those pain points that our persona has. We also know from recent data that came out just from a survey from Service Titan, Service Titan about a week ago, that there are more and more single women buying homes. There's more data like that out there. So, we have to then lean into like what their life stage is at and the problems that they encounter at that life stage when they're buying a home. Maybe if it's a single woman, they're not comfortable trying to take these things on themselves. So we can speak into that when we're doing our marketing and our brand. Of course, we come alongside as a guide who's, we can show up when you need us. We're here to help, again, to make your home safe, comfortable, and healthy.
Mm. Is there an exercise that you might be able to walk a listener through on how to come up with the simple thing, those simple words that you just said? Home, a home safe. You said safe, welcoming, comfortable,
and healthy.
And healthy. If I'm a listener, I wanted to walk through an exercise to come up with something so simple like that for my brand, what might an exercise be, or series of questions, or something that I can do right now during this conversation or on my own time?
Yeah, there's a great framework, and I've shortened it to what you would find in the blue collar branding book. We call it a one-liner. I've just called it a pass framework, where find the problem that you are solving for that particular customer. And let's just say, they want to have, so we know that, let's just put it this, we want to talk about the problem. We want to agitate that problem a little bit. We want to present a solution. And then we want to talk about what success looks like. So this is a slightly modified version of what you would find in the StoryBrand framework as the one-liner. But, throw out a problem. We'll start from there.
So let's say the problem, we have like like landscape lighting companies that we've been working with Better Than Rich. We have I don't know, probably about a dozen at this point. So let's go with my home looks scary at nighttime. That's the problem.
Okay.
It feels unsafe. It doesn't feel welcoming at nighttime. That's the problem.
All right. So we kind of create this framework for this problem. As a homeowner, you want people to feel safe and comfortable when they approach your house. You want it to be easy to find. The problem is you don't have landscape lighting that's going to make your home feel welcoming and inviting. With XYZ Lighting Company, we can come into your home, sit down with you, look at your landscaping, your lighting, your home, and make your home have greater curb appeal when you work with us.
That's pretty good.
That's a quick one.
That was great, right off the cuff. That is a really, really great. And if you had to break down that phrase that you just said, essentially, you broke it down into problem, solution, and well, the solution is the end, like how we solve the problem.
Success.
Success. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I kind of stumbled at that point. So when you're done working with us, your home will be safe, welcoming, and inviting to your family and to your visitors from dusk till dawn.
So Yeah, so that's problem solution success is the frame, and you just kind of gave like a fill in the blanks, like an ad libs type of situation for a listener to go back and listen to that.
Yes.
That's perfect. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, it's a framework that works really well. Actually, if you go to StoryBrand.ai, you can create. I think they have a tagline, but they have a tool there to help you to do that. But but that framework is, in the StoryBrand book. There's a version of it in my book. It's just a way where it forces us as the business owner to step into the problem and the concern that the homeowner has. So in
Mm,
this case, in the lighting, they're concerned because it looks scary and uninviting where they want it to be. So that's an external problem. And when it's external, it makes them feel like, well, nobody's going to want to come visit us unless our home looks welcoming and inviting.
mm.
We struggle with this at our house because we have a very large driveway and that half of the house seems dark. So we've just put a lot of light on the other side. So it guides people to the porch and, lets them know here's the sidewalk to the door, and it just looks better.
Yeah.
It's that curb appeal.
Anything else before I take a pivot? Anything else you want to hit on the this idea of the story brand, like the client, the hero's journey, or like this avatar specific before I kind of take a pivot in a different direction with this conversation?
Yeah. So on this hero's journey, again, thinking about it from a service company perspective, it's different than thinking about it from a product perspective. So for a service company, the solution is often a product, but it's delivered through the service. So that's why it's really important to really clearly articulate what that problem is that particular client is and prospect is trying to solve. So let's just stick with our lighting company. There's security, can be one concern. There's safety, which is aligned with security, but there's also beauty and that welcoming feel. So the messaging for each of those will be slightly different. And if you try to overwhelm the homeowner that you're trying to, bring into your world and educate them on why they should work with you, if you try to overwhelm them with too many things, it's like trying to hold three bowling balls at one time and then covering them with Vaseline. They're hard to. So you want to stick with one or two things that really appeal to that particular persona or avatar that you're trying to attract.
It's great because and the reason why it's great, Brian, is because a lot of these guys often are really good at the thing that they're good at, the trade itself, and they kind of miss, or what they typically do, they'll hire a company to do the marketing, just say, handle it for me. And then they just sometimes get pissed when it's not yielding the results that they want. And that's why a lot of companies hire us to help them with the conversions, to kind of improve the conversions, and we kind of poke around with them. But the reason why we have the podcast itself is to kind of give them the tools for them to do it themselves. We don't want them to have to pay us money. We want them to listen to the show, and just like, if they're already paying a marketing company, it's like, hey, our conversions are kind of sucky. Oh, you're not doing a hero's journey. Well, let's try that. Maybe if we're speaking to our avatar a little bit more clear on what our brand does and who we are and problems we solve and how we solve them and what success looks like on the other end, maybe that could improve conversions. With that kind of being said, is there anything else that you want to hit on improving conversion before we go into, I want to hit on this CARE framework that you have about clarity, alignment, relevance, and experience. I know it's some things that you really are an expert at, but anything you want to kind of say with the conversion piece before we make that pivot into that direction?
Yeah, particularly on the conversion side, if you're using a digital, ad or even a print ad that has a call to action in it, the message in the ad has to be, what's happening on the conversion page or the call has to match what's in the ad. So if it says call for the $50 off coupon and they call and it's the CSR doesn't even talk about that, and hopefully at that point they're using a tracking number, so they know, oh, they're calling on this one, this number is associated with this offer, they may not get that sale. I'd say conversion, that journey is really important from, a Google ad or Facebook ad, or even just what they might see on Google Business Profile, bringing them to a landing page that aligns with, again, what the offer is. That's the biggest thing, is making sure that it's clear from point A to point B.
Ooh. All right. I want to park here for just a moment because you just strike a really important conversation topic here on conversion, because what we want, what I just heard you say, Brian, is we want to have a predictable user experience for the prospect. And if the prospect is calling because of a $50 off coupon, if that's the if, then I want to make sure that I'm on the right path of my journey because it's being talked about. Oh, there's a $50 off coupon. But if I don't hear that, then it's inconsistent. Now I have uncertainty. Now I'm going to probably go to another company because it feels a little icky, like a bait and switch. You baited me in with $50 off, but now you're not talking about it. That doesn't feel really good. So it has to be consistent, is what I heard you say. So therefore, on the back end, the tracking is where a CRM comes into play. Those 3 letters that a lot of people don't know how to spell. So we do need to have some sort of tracking or the tagging. I love what you said. There's a separate phone number that's tied to that specific ad that is, so anytime this phone rings or anytime this number gets a text message, we know it's coming from this specific ad that we placed. And if we're doing it automatically, then that's even better, because now we're avoiding human error. Because if it's just a text number, they text the number, we automatically can send, hey, thanks for reaching out about your $50 off coupon. We're here to serve. Use this link to book a call with us or hop on our calendar, right? And now it's automated and we avoid the human error with the CSR, obviously depending on the industry. But again, Brian, I heard you say something really important. Anything else that you want to hit on when it comes to this conversion piece, when it comes now, the call to action button, the CRM piece of automating some of this stuff, creating predictability in the user journey, anything else that you're inspired on as we're just kind of pitching and catching here?
Yeah, definitely. Let's not neglect the CSRs. Our data shows that easily 90% of our inbounds are calls. And so we're focusing on training and empowering our CSRs to be able to answer the phone confidently and lead the client through the conversation. And, early in the conversation, it could be, how did you hear about us? And so that could be the point where the prospective client says, oh, I've got a coupon that I saw in, we use something called Town Planner. Oh, great. Well, what's that coupon is for this? So that, there has to make alignment. So when we jump into the care, the alignment has to be that the CSR team also knows about what marketing's doing. So we've got coupons, they're worth this, they come from this source, this lead source. And I know that's a framework I've put in place, where I identified, here's the lead source, here's the coupon, here's the offer, here's the associated phone number. So they can keep that spreadsheet up on their screens and know what's coming in where.
That's great. So let's go to the framework. CARE. We got clarity, alignment, relevance, experience. Walk us through origin story of the framework. Why did you create it? And then go into, let's start with C, if that makes the most sense. If you want to give an overview, you can give an overview. We can go one at a time, whatever you feel most inspired to.
Sure. Well, let's jump back into the origin story of it. I've studied brand strategy for over 20 years and applied it to large companies, to North America's largest steel tubing manufacturer, worked a little bit with Johnson & Johnson before they came Kenvue. And on the brand strategy side, we think of that kind of, those 2 big words, brand and strategy, merged together. What does that mean? And really what it is, it's about creating a sustainable competitive advantage where you don't need to worry about your competitors, because you're creating differentiation in the marketplace. You're owning a space and getting known for something in that space, whether it's, lighting installation, whether it's plumbing, whether it's roofing. And so knowing that most home service owners many just want it simple. And one of my clients said to me one time, I just want it simple. So I'm thinking, how do I distill this down to something very approachable? And we always start with clarity. And clarity is just that when a company knows who they are, what they do, and why it matters. And it's not just why it matters to them, but it's why it matters to the marketplace. And so, and then you see this why it matters starts to speak into relevance. Alignment is what we spoke to a moment ago. Oh, thanks for posting that. It's a good reminder. Uniting the team around this consistent customer experience at every touch point. So we talked about the conversion journey, a Google ad, a billboard, a wrapped vehicle. Those are all touch points. And so those are introducing the prospective customer to the business. But we want to make sure that what's being said there, what's being said by the CSRs, how the team is operating internally are all always in alignment. Not only so that the business operates well, but in alignment with what the clients are looking for, their problems, their needs. Relevance, positioning that company as that preferred local choice. That is so important right now because there's so many companies in the marketplace that are PE owned and people are noticing. I just want to read something real quick that I got from somebody a few minutes, just literally an hour before we jumped on the phone. And the individual said, I found out over the past several months, many local plumbing and HVAC contractors are now owned by national private equity groups, which we know. Then she said, I recently tried making an appointment with a longstanding vendor for their service and found out that the appointment center was in Nebraska and we're in Cleveland. So the thought was an emphasis on a strong local family business would help position us favorably in the community, which I wholeheartedly agree. And that's what we do. We talk a lot about that. We're relevant because we live here, we work here, we're local, we're family owned. We're not answering to a boardroom that's in Nebraska. And that's resonating with a lot of people right now. And then how we deliver experience, creating signature moments where at the end of the service call, people aren't talking about the product they received. Because, nobody has guests come over and they say, hey, let me show you our new furnace. Usually, it's the experience is more like, oh, we had these technicians from the service company and they were fantastic. They left the place cleaner than it was. They picked up everything and took it away. And no, Brad, there's nothing wrong with Nebraska. So, that's the experience then you look for in your Google reviews, because that's, again, an important touch point that people are going to refer to as social proof, as an element of authority. And so all of those things working together, those operate in my framework at the core of the company to support sales and marketing and operations and leadership and revenue. And one more thing that I can't remember right now.
So, and it's okay. I'll let you catch your breath for a second. So this piece of clarity where it's like, we have our mission, we have our values, what makes us unique, what's our differentiator, what has us swimming in a blue ocean versus a red ocean. We've had many episodes on this podcast talking specifically about that. Just that one piece, we jammed for like an hour on just like how to have a differentiating in your brand. So listener, you could go back and listen to a couple of our past episodes on that, which is great. We gain clarity on this. Great. Now we have clarity on this is what makes our brand unique. This is our unique proposition. This is who we serve. This is how we serve them. And now we want to unite our team around this experience. As far as this piece goes, the team, as far as the technicians doing the fulfillment, you have usually the owner and maybe one or two other people potentially helping with sales. And then you have like your CSR or marketing, or maybe it's outsourced. Some of them work with contractors. How are we getting alignment with all these different parties? Are you suggesting having meetings with them? Are you suggesting having like internal communication channels? Well, what is your suggestions on how to make sure that we are in alignment? Not one time. Oh, I remember 6 months ago, I already told them this. I told them this 6 months ago. I told them this when we hired them. And you're right. That doesn't feel like what you're saying, but I'd love for you to maybe jam on that just a little bit.
Yeah. So let's liken this whole group to a choir. And when you have a choir, the choir has to have a songbook to sing from. And typically they're singing 4 different parts: bass, alto, tenor, and soprano. So you want to have that songbook, or we'll call it a playbook, that everybody can refer to for the core messaging. Things like mission, vision, and values, those are internal guiding, coming in. This is who we serve. This is what we stand for. That's to keep the team united internally. But when you're starting to bring in outside, say you're working with lead aggregators, or you're working with an outside sales rep, you want to have a document that you can go over with them maybe once a month, maybe quarterly, that says, these are the core messages and how we speak into the marketplace. This is how we want you to represent us. The same with the CSR team. help them build value during the conversations with people by having a consistent, not necessarily a script, but talking points. Let's just call it a phrase bank that they can refer to as they work through that. And then internally, for the leadership team, we talked yesterday a little bit about, what must be true for marketing. And what must be true for me for marketing is that making sure we're familiar to the marketplace and that it's as frictionless as possible for someone to find out about us and make the call.
I do want to have you define what you mean by frictionless. We talk about that a lot on the show too.
Uh-huh.
Before we go into that, this piece of actually go into that first because I just lost my train of thought of where I wanted to go because I was like, ooh, I want to make sure you say that, and then I'm like, come back to my. So what do you mean by frictionless?
So, say someone clicks an ad and it brings them to a website, but the scheduling button doesn't work. We use Scheduling Pro for everything. So what if something happens with Scheduling Pro and it doesn't work? That's a Service Titan integration. What if at one point they change the URL and it goes to a page with no form? What is the customer supposed to do? So we want to give that prospective customer multiple ways to reach us. If there's a call into our CSRs during the day to our call center and we're busy, do you want to leave someone on hold for 50 seconds? So this happened to me. I had two things. I needed siding replaced, just a little J channel put up above my garage. And I needed a window pane pulled out to replace it because the seal broke. So I called a local handyman company and I got the voicemail and then I'm waiting, not the voicemail, but the on hold. And I'm waiting. I waited 50 seconds and like, hey, we'll be with you in a moment. I'm waiting 60 seconds, minute and 15 seconds. I'm like, click, I hung up. So I was like, yeah, I think they might be, I understand they get busy. I emailed them the next day. Like, hey, I tried calling. Here's what I'm looking for. Guess how many days it took for them to get back to me?
I don't tell me. It's painful to hear.
4 days.
Dude.
4
We
days.
talk speed to lead a lot, dude. That's terrible. 4 days is rough, man.
Exactly. And, I know it's a company that's growing, but, it's not only speed to lead, but, think about the idea that the sale is a sample of the service. So how you're bringing in prospective customers, that conversion process, what happens when you've converted them and they're in the call center or they've filled out a scheduler, what happens after that? And there's so many different ways to do this. I mean, we could probably spend 2 hours talking about different platforms and their pros and cons and what worked with them, what doesn't. But we just want to make sure that the experience that they have booking a call with us is as seamless and frictionless as possible, and that they feel cared for, they feel seen and heard, listened to that entire way. And we can create as many processes as we want around this, but we know that at some point, the variable is human interaction. So it's really important that processes and people are aligned.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And what I remembered my piece, but the reason why I wanted you to jam on the frictionless piece and what it means to have friction is we talked on the show about Michael Gerber and E-Myth. We've talked about that a few times, but he really breaks it down of like what frictionless is, and not only frictionless, but an outstanding user experience. So friction is like all the way on one end of the spectrum, an outstanding user experience is all the way on the other end of the spectrum. So where we wow them. So instead of, if friction is being on hold for 50 seconds and getting a follow-up 4 days later, that's friction. What is a wowed experience? A wowed experience is hey, while we're on the phone with you, we already plugged in your address. We see exactly where you're located. We see, oh, you've actually done work with these other vendors in the past. It looks like because you've done work with these other vendors before, we're actually going to honor, we have a promo going on in your area because we're friends with these other companies, like running through AI, over delivering for them. They have availability to something that they didn't know about. And we're going to be able to come to your house ASAP, right? Like whatever, it's like, wow, that was really good, right? So that's like on the other end of the spectrum. So I do want to circle back to the point that I wanted to make before, which is the contractors. You said if I hire like a web developer, or if I hire a lead generator, or outside sales rep, or if I'm a general contractor, I'm subbing out all the work to like other vendors essentially. However, they're all a representative of my brand because they're fulfilling my client. So they're interacting with my clients, people that I am paying for. And I want, if they're a representative of my brand, I want them to align with my vision and my values. And what I heard you say is something like they're a part of your team. These aren't actual vendors. They're representative of your team. When I was in direct sales, everyone was an independent contractor. I've recruited over 5,000 independent contractors. They weren't employees, but I raised them in an environment that had them feel like they were a part of a culture and a team that they were excited to be a part of. So just because they're not an employee or a staff or full-time salary or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean we can't have them be a part of the vision and the brand, is what I heard you say. And I truly believe that. And I think that's really important. However, I think some people listen to the show and some contractors, some guys in the trades are like, dude, that's Jim. I'm Joe. Like, what am I going to do? I'm going to tell him to do it my way or the highway. Come on. I've known the guy for 25 years. I'm going to tell him, hey, do it this way now. What would you say about having a reframe if somebody's listening to the show and they've been using a vendor for so long, but they realize that there is inconsistencies between how their contractor might be doing one thing, and I want to influence that vendor to maybe have a reframe as I'm shifting my brand, or I'm shifting some of the culture pieces, or I'm shifting our differentiator, or I'm like making some of these adjustments, and now I got to communicate that to this person I've known for 25 years. Maybe it's someone, a part of my family that I brought in, like as someone to help me with this thing. What is a reframe conversation that you might suggest with this when it comes to this creating alignment piece, which is where we're still in the CARE framework: clarity, alignment, relevance,
Mhm.
experience. But in this alignment piece, how do we reframe something for these vendors or these contractors?
So I think there's multiple ways to do it. So if you're working with an outside firm, is to just have some conversations with them. So if it's a sales rep, when you talk, ask them to run through their sales presentation to that they would give. Ask, because a lot of times that what we see currently right now is that sales reps don't often talk about the company enough to establish that the empathy, the authority, and the credibility that the company has. For instance, we've been in business since 1963. We've worked with tens of thousands of clients in this area. We're experts in these services. So we're confident that we can help you. But if they don't talk about those things, about the experience they've had, that they're not building up a little bit of credibility in the conversation, you know, I don't know that you need to get into the vision, although it's like our vision for the business now, and this is just more on like the one-to-one side. Our vision for the business is this. We're committed to helping. I'm just going to use Gorjank as an example. Northeast Ohio homeowners have a home that's safe, comfortable, and healthy. And everything that we do has to align around that. What must be true for us then to make those things happen? And, as an independent sales rep, I want you to be in complete agreement and alignment with that as well. So that when you're talking to somebody you're going to bring to us, that they're hearing through you what we're going to be saying to them at our end. That's why I think it's really important, because if they're just going out and they're, heaven forbid, they're using some sort of, they're using a questionable sales technique, or they're over promising something that you can't deliver, that doesn't align with the service delivery. So the customer is going to be disappointed, and they might not stick around after the first job, because we want to develop that relationship. We talk about relational marketing, so that people want to stick around because we've wowed them with a great experience. And that sales rep or the marketing team, if they're external, they're part of that experience. And, the marketing team may never have direct interaction with the client, but they need to know what the owner's vision is. They need to know what they stand for, so that's represented in what they produce and deliver.
Yeah, that's great. I do think that it's really critical. A lot of these guys aren't using outside sales, and from my seat, at least what I'm seeing, at least in those $3 to $5 million range, or the sub 10 million range, sub five, I
Mhm.
would say, they start maybe adding on internal salespeople. Usually, the owner is like the best salesperson. They bring on like their son or something like that, or their friend or something along those lines. But a lot of times it is like subcontracting a job out, and it's on the
Mm.
fulfillment side, or hiring a marketing team on the front end. Usually is what I see is on those sides of the funnel more so than in the middle of the funnel. I don't know if you see that to be the case as well and from your seat, but that's kind of what I'm seeing from mine.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, I know of different companies that I know of one is about that was about $5 million, and he had just given up the accounting responsibility, but he was still doing the marketing.
Huh. Cool.
Another one was at 3 and wasn't sure what to do, was interviewing. This is when I owned the agency. And just for the listeners, I've owned an agency for 30 years, but accepted a role in mid 2025 as the marketing director for a home services company that's been a long time client of ours. So I'm seeing both sides of it. When I was outside, we always made it a point, and it was just the way we worked, to have integrity, to view the work we were doing as a stewardship of that company's investment through us in their marketing. So we obsessed over creating a strong return on that ad spend and making sure that the phones kept ringing. Now that I'm inside, it's the same thing. you know, it's obsessing over, how are we optimizing the spend that we're doing? So I hope that answers the question.
It's great. Yeah. When obviously the last two pieces are the relevance and the experience, then we can go in a different direction. You hit on the relevance a little bit about being like this preferred local choice. A lot of people, a lot of these guys in the trades are running their businesses through word of mouth. They did a great job through word of mouth. Word of mouth probably can get them or has gotten them to their first seven figures. And that's how they became relevant. They became relevant just from, hey, this is my local guy telling friends, blah, blah, blah. They've been positioned. What becomes beyond that? Like, is that okay? Like, do we just play? I've been doing this for 25 years. Everyone in the neighborhood knows me. I recently had a conversation with someone that said, stop calling your customers or your clients to your other clients. You say your neighbors. If you're a local service business owner, you just say, yeah, your neighbors, other people in the neighborhood, right? People a part of your community. Like using words like that. If you're providing a local service, you want to speak in those terms. So I wasn't sure if there was anything from your seat that you maybe can share beyond just I've had a lot of experience in my local area, and that's why I'm a preferred local choice. And we just hire local. That's why we're a preferred local choice. Is there more significance there that someone listening can say, oh, okay, there's some golden nuggets beyond just the basic stuff that I probably already know?
Yeah. Let's just start with, how we refer to our clients. I've been thinking about why don't we, and I've been suggesting this internally at Gorjank, why don't we refer to our clients as homeowners? So we really personalize who we are, because we're strictly residential. So we work with single family homeowners. And that gives us a different perspective and respect for who they are, because we, as homeowners ourselves, know what it's like when the heating isn't working, or the plumbing's not working, or the electricity doesn't come on. So we want to really truly be able to empathize with them. That's how we then start to become relevant, is we can step into the other homeowner's shoes. It's true, you can't. I've got a friend who they've got has a partner. They do all of their marketing by word of mouth referrals. I think that can work to a point, but if you want to get to that 3 to 5 million, one, you're going to have capacity, but in order to hire more people, you're also going to have more leads coming in, which means then you're going to have to amplify the proof of relevance that you've already created in the marketplace. And just being local isn't a true differentiator. It's becoming kind of table stakes at that point. So relevant is being able to speak to, if the area you're in, for instance, is in the Northeast, you're an expert in boilers, and not only just boilers, but Beckett oil burners. There's expertise that you can dive in to make you more relevant. There's a lot of historic homes. You know, we had purchased a 60-year-old home, 25, 30 years ago. It still had, what do they call that? Post and wire electrical.
Not familiar. I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's these little ceramic knobs, and the wires went through them, and then they ran under the
Oh,
floor joists. Yeah, it was not modern, going in the walls and through the walls.
all right.
So that got updated at some point. Being familiar in your area, we've worked with companies in the Midwest, like Middle America, where they have a lot of aluminum wiring.
Mm.
Relevance says, we know that aluminum wire is dangerous. And so you speak to that. You need to upgrade your panels and the wiring in your home, because back when they installed those, they thought it was a good idea. But we know that aluminum wiring is really dangerous now. So again, speaking to that safety issue.
I
So
one of the things I had a friend, he's going to be coming on the show. His name is Rich, and one of the things he said is if he asks he works with like a publishing company. He said if he asks a home service company, what makes you unique as far as like when it comes to why customers choose you? He said 9 out of 10 people say it's our customer service. And then he has a follow-up question of can you give me specific examples of what separates you from others when it comes to customer service? And he gave me this list of questions that he asked, like, what's your warranty? Does it go through you or it's handed to someone else? Or how do you handle large accounts different than smaller accounts? Are you insured or licensed? Do you have wrapped trucks? Do you have uniforms? What's your cleanup policy? What do you have wearing booties to keep things neat? And what is your policy for keeping things neat and cleanly or clean during your process? What do you do to preserve the client's day-to-day living to make it feel like you're not even there? How are you managing client expectations and communicating with them? Right? Like these were like unbelievable questions, and I'm super excited to have him on the show. His name is Rich Gilbert. But the reason why I want to bring that to you is I feel like that kind of ties into this relevance piece with what you're talking about, and how someone can listen to this episode and maybe take this relevance piece, connect it to this experience piece, and maybe question, I want to charge premium pricing. I want to be relevant in my space. I want everyone to use me, but am I actually giving a really good experience on the back end that is deserving of premium pricing? Am I actually providing good customer service? Although those are the words I'm saying, but am I doing it? Do you have a series of questions or answers or frameworks or suggestions on how to help with this deliver experience, this E in your care framework?
I believe there's some, specifically in the book, I'd have to go back and look. There are some models to go through, and it's in this book. It's probably in the toolkit section.
So you have 2 books.
Yes, I have Trade Secrets, which was kind of a precursor to this one, where I talk more about a similar model of this framework, but aligning with the StoryBrand business model, and which is just a standard business. It's not a StoryBrand business model; it's just business model.
That's the blue collar branding.
Blue collar branding then is more around the CARE framework, and it's specifically for home service
Oh, okay,
businesses.
cool.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the questions I got in here. There's starter questions that we've got: how to train the team. Yes, so there's questions in there. I think there could be like a framework around how do we build value for the company, like what's unique about the company. So again, Gorjank was founded in 1963. So we've been in business for over 60 years. We have over 2,700 5-star reviews on Google. There's a lot of home service companies that don't have anywhere near that. We have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. I don't know how many people actually go to that, but they're still relevant enough that, like, the BBB is still relevant enough in the marketplace to know, if it's an A+ rating, they just hear the word A+. So I think we talk through that, but we talk through like why are our technicians unique to us? Well, they're not contractors; they're W-2. They're factory trained, and they're certified in from everything from the EPA to NATE, which is a national certification for HVAC. How we work is unique. So I think those are some of the ways I look at it. How do we provide service excellence? And again, we often talk about what must be true from our company in order to be different from others. Others have uniforms, others have wrap trucks, It's just those are less of what's the differentiator to what creates reassurance for a homeowner. So I guess
Cool.
I guess I have a series of questions. I'd have to go back and look for it.
Yeah.
It's
Where would somebody go get that book? I think that's a great starting place or a great resource. If you already have these in the book, awesome. Let's just go there.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. Just look up Brian Sooy on Amazon. You'll find it. It's called Blue Collar Branding, the Field Proven Framework to Transform Service Companies into Market Leaders.
Brian Soy Amazon. So let me see if I could just go find it right now. So if I search you, there you are. Let's take a peek. I'll share my screen for anybody that's on YouTube. Blue collar branding.
Blue Collar Branding.
This one right here.
Oh, wait a minute. Am I seeing it? Yes, that's it.
All right. Perfect. Cool.
Yeah.
So listener, this is where we can go to get blue collar branding right on Amazon. Pops right up. The field proven framework to transform service companies into market leaders, which is awesome. So Brian, go ahead, please.
Oh, so that's where it's interesting when you ask a question like that, because I packed a lot into this book, and I was thinking over the past few days as I was prepping, it's like I can't remember all this stuff in here, and it's a lot of it's intuitive and it comes up in conversations.
Sure.
But I glanced through it last night. There's some definite workflows in it to lead your team through.
It's great. That's great. I mean, with that being said, we're kind of coming towards the exits. Before I ask the final question that we ask every guest, what did we not hit on today that you're like, dang, Mike, this flew by. I really wanted to talk about this, and we did not get to it. This would be an opportunity for us to do that. What is something we didn't get to today? You're like, I really wanted to hit on that today.
So having been inside and outside and inside, if you're working with outside marketing team, just always be aware of what they're doing. It's kind of a trust but and verify, not trust but trust and verify. And look for what we call the sanity metrics. Like if there's an ad campaign running, is that ad campaign actually producing revenue? Is it attributable? Because a lot of agencies still focus on what we call the vanity metrics. Like, oh, we had 8 million impressions and we got so many click-throughs. They're like, well, yeah, but what did that produce at the end? And that's how that's how the agency is a good steward for the owner. And having been an owner and having hired outside teams to, help market my books from time to time, I always had to question, like, why did I just spend this much money and I haven't sold that many books? Or, why are we using this service instead of that service? So that's the same approach I use now as I hire teams for Gorjank.
Very cool. Very cool. And you're based out in Ohio, right?
Right, Northeast Ohio.
Great. And I was looking over like your resume and accolades, top 100 marketing influencer to follow, according to relevance.com. That's a pretty cool, like notable statistic there. Yeah.
It was. I keep leaning into that one. I was on the same list as Seth Godin. Who knew?
Oh, dang. Purple Cow, man. I love Seth's book. I mean, he has tons of great work, but that framework is amazing with Purple Cow. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, I really appreciate what you're doing. I'm so grateful that you came on the show and I was able to support, the listeners of Better Than Rich show and what you're doing for the guys in the trades. Cause, I have this shirt on A to Z Plumbing. That's my dad's company up in New Jersey. He's coming down to visit, or we're actually going to be going to SeaWorld with my two kids this weekend. So he has not really spent that much time with the kids. So I'm excited to be able to do that. And I had him these shirts made because he has no shirts. So it's kind of, when I say no shirts, legit, he does jobs without a shirt on. He's 84 years old and still, up in Trenton, New Jersey, working 6 days a week. His team is just kind of a hodgepodge stuff. So, but I built this show. We built our services. Everything we do is for pretty much it's like my dad 30 years ago. So guys in their 50s usually, or who are attracted to us, or late 40s that like want to kind of get things right. So that way they could avoid some of the pitfalls that my dad experiences. He loves what he does. He's great, but man, there's just some stuff that would help. And everything that you just talked about is really helpful. So we ask every guest, Brian, same question every show. What does it mean to you to be better than rich?
Well, for me personally, it's significance over success. I'm not only wanting to leave a legacy, I want to build legacy now. And so that's the same reason I've written the books I have. I've learned a lot over the years, and The trades are phenomenal. I love working in them. Even, graphic design is a trade. That's my background. And I get my hands dirty the same, not quite the same way as a plumber or, maybe someone out doing landscaping, but, being able to help other companies for me just represents significance in my life. And that's what it means to be better than rich.
It's great. Appreciate it, Brian. Where do we want people to go? We already told them they can find the book on Amazon. I know you have aspire.com. If you want to tell us a little bit about Aspire, you already talked about Gorjank. Where do you want people to stay in touch with you or be able to just learn more?
Yeah, if they want, if anybody has questions, they can feel free to message me on LinkedIn. It's Brian Sooy on LinkedIn. I'm on X. I do post on X a lot about the trades and about branding and marketing for the trades. Those are the two best places. I'd love for anybody to visit the gorjank.com website as well. That's where I put into practice everything I talked about. So you can see examples, take the great ideas, maybe say, "Ooh, I could do that better." Who knows? But yeah, it's, in Aspire too. There's some case studies on Aspire, AESPIRE.com for the trades. And I think they could be very helpful for anybody to just apply to their business.
Awesome. I'll share my screen just so it's captured. This is Gorjank Home Services right here. Gorjanc Home Services in Ohio. So that way, if you guys wanted to pull some of that, of what Brian was talking about. Thank you again, Brian. And then Aspire, as far as aspire.com, that was the other link that he just shared. This is what this one looks like as well. And we can even try Ella AI. Do you want to speak to Ella AI real quick?
Yeah. So Ella is an AI-driven marketing platform built by marketers for marketing. And there will be, most likely in November, a release of a blue-collar edition of Ella, where the book and the framework is built into it. Trade Secrets is already built into it. I use Ella for Gorjank. I've used it for other clients prior to joining Gorjank. It's great in that it's guided. And there's, if you click that link on the homepage, you can sign up for access to it for, I think, a trial now, but they're working through a re-release of it. And this is the blue collar branding early access page.
Very cool. Listener, you got to take advantage of this. You get Ella AI for free for 14 days for blue collar branding. And it says no strings attached, no credit card needed. Just give them your information and submit a trial request. And I'm sure it's good user feedback for them. And it'll also be a really good resource for you. So excellent stuff. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Aspire.com. Brian, thanks again. Listener, as always, thank you for supporting the show. And if you're liking season 4 in this new platform where we're streaming live, you're able to be here live. We have a couple of really awesome conversations. I know I said that at the end of every episode, but hopefully you continue to see that, bringing great guests to the Better Than Rich show. So as always, leave today better than you found it. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram at betterthan_rich and join our Facebook group at the Better Than Rich Show. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, leave today better than you found it.